We used to harvest a lot. We used to eat. These are the words of an elderly woman from Khachaba village in Mapela, expressing her anger over her crops being destroyed by a mine's invasion onto her land.
Mapela is an officially recognized traditional community made up of 42 villages near Mokopane in Limpopo. In the midst of these villages, and on the Mapela people's land, is the largest platinum mine in the world, Anglo Platinum's Mogalakwena mine.
The Mapela people have experienced a long history of oppression and dispossession under colonialism and apartheid. During colonialism, Mapela people were made to live in designated areas and were stripped of land that previously belonged to them. And then, during apartheid, the government created separate living areas called Bantustans in order to exclude black people from South African society.
Mapela was incorporated into the Leboa Bantustan, where its chiefs were subjugated under a royal family that was foreign to them and located far away from Mapela. This stripped the Mapela people of their autonomy in terms of land and governance.
The Bantustan system was collapsed in 1994 with the end of apartheid. After that, the Mapela community's land was transferred from the Leboa government to the South African government. So now, the government holds the title deed to Mapela land. But, according to customary law, the Mapela community has the right to decide what happens to their land, to use the land, and to any benefits that come from the land. These rights are also protected by the Constitution and the Interim Protection of Informal Land Rights Act of 1996. Mapela residents may not be deprived of their customary law land rights without their consent.
The Mapela people's land, livelihoods, and security of tenure are under threat again from mining operations by Anglo-American. Platinum mining started intensively in 1993 when Anglo-American secured a lease and a mining right over sections of Mapela land without consulting the community.
Since then, Anglo-Americans' activities have resulted in the location of residents from 3 Mapela villages, prohibiting access to Mapela's residents' plowing fields, moving their ancestors' graves, and destroying their environment.
Residents report that Anglo-American was aggressive and coerced residents into accepting relocation agreements. For example, Anglo has been fencing off plowing and grazing fields, restricting access to roads and paths, and conducting intrusive blasting operations before relocation or compensation has occurred. There are also allegations of Anglo cutting off water services for those who refused to move. So, it is unclear whether the community gave real consent.
The residents that lost access to ploughing and grazing land were not consulted, and many Mapela residents are yet to be compensated for the harm they have suffered from mining operations.
Mining has severely reduced the ability of the Mapela people to provide for their families by growing crops or keeping livestock on their land.
The relocations have also involved exhuming and reburying graves of Mapela residents' ancestors. Between 2000 and 2012, Anglo relocated more than 2,200 graves in Mapela, and many residents have lost access to their ancestors' graves.
Some graves were not moved, and some graves have been lost beneath mine dumps because of the ineptitude or carelessness of the company employed by Anglo to exhume the graves.
Ancestors play an important role in the spiritual and cultural life of the Mapela people, and there is a strong belief that the well-being of the living is tied to the well-being of the dead. If the dead are not at peace, the living will not be at peace. They will be cursed by bad luck, sickness, and even death. Although the Sekuruwe community went through a cleansing ceremony in order to appease their ancestors, they have not been adequately compensated for the trauma caused by the exhumation of their ancestors' graves. In addition to the disruption of the social fabric of the community and direct impact on the livelihoods of the people, the mine has also increased the people's vulnerability by destroying the environment, creating environmental hazards for the surrounding community. In Mapela, blasting has greatly affected the well-being of the community by disrupting school days, and residents are often unable to sleep. It has also caused structural damage to houses. Air pollution caused by dust from Mogalakwena mine has also severely affected surrounding villages. Mining uses excessive amounts of water, which mixes with waste materials and chemicals and can seep into groundwater or into rivers. Anglo-American has been accused of causing water shortages and contamination of water sources in the area, which is already water stressed.
Much of the compensation offered by Anglo has been inadequate. The amount paid for relocation has not been big enough and has not included environmental damages or the cost of social disruptions. Much of the agricultural land offered as a replacement for land that was lost to the mine has been substandard.
So how does the situation come about? How are mining interests prioritized above local communities' interests? Well, the current policy of the Department of Mineral Resources and mining companies is that companies are not required to finalize compensation before starting their mining operations.
Communities suffer under mining before they agree to compensation. This is coercive, and local residents often feel pushed to accept whatever the mining company offers in order to escape their current suffering.
Their legal position is worsened by the fact that since the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act has come into effect, it has been the status quo that mining communities' consent has not been required before mining takes place on their land. This disregards customary law and the Interim Protection of Informal Land Rights Act, which states that no person may be deprived of any informal right to land without his or her consent.
Mapela residents have managed to obtain greater benefits from mining on their land than most communities in their position. By means of protest, legal action, and the support of land rights organizations, the community has obtained a settlement agreement, an extensive social and labor plan, and a separate development trust funded by Anglo-American. However, the creation of these instruments has been controversial. They have not included sufficient consultation with the broader Mapela community, and protests in Mapela have, at times, highlighted that the type of development envisaged by the mine has not been appropriate.
The relative success of Mapela residents to secure benefits from mining was enabled by a number of factors which are present in Mapela but are not found in other mining-affected communities. The fact that Mogalakwena is the largest platinum mine in the world brings greater publicity. The size of the community gives it better bargaining power. The involvement of outside organizations has enabled greater information being provided to residents and has enabled them to grapple with the legal issues. Lastly, the fact that Anglo cares about its public image has meant that it is more amenable to providing benefits to the community so that it is seen as socially responsible. However, we must ask ourselves, what would happen if these factors were not present? How do other communities that do not have these strengths cope? In many cases, they don't.
In order to uplift the well-being of rural people in South Africa, we need to safeguard existing rights holders, their ability to choose what happens on their land, and their ability to derive benefits from their land. It is clear that mining-affected communities' legal position needs to be strengthened.
Communities should have the right to say no to mining on their land. Compensation should be negotiated and finalized before mining affects local communities' lives. Consultation must happen in an equitable manner and must extend to the entire community, not just the chief and not by non-democratic means. All relevant information should be explained in languages and in a manner understood by the local community. Environmental laws should be upheld and mining-affected communities must be protected from having their environment polluted.